Hello there. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. And how is your weekend going? I hope your weekend is actually doing wonderfully well. Again, my name is Dr. Julius Oluwasegun Aroba, the world's entrepreneurship career mind surgeon. And in this week masterclass, I'm going to be talking about how to set your long term, short term, and your mid-term goal. Some might say 2 years, 5 years, and 10 years goal. In this masterclass is actually about how, when you look at the purpose of creation of man, and thank God we're in a season that Christ actually died for the Christians, for every one of us, so that we can be able to have dominion, power, glory, grace, and have everything with wisdom and the riches of the world. How every journey we do and everything we do in life is all about creating the financial wealth freedom. And now, what we are talking about is that if you want to be able to make money in this world that we're in today, you've got to solve problem. Because if you don't solve problem, you cannot create money. Now, when you look at the story here, let's take a case study of Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs, look at a situation that is very appalling to the world, and he said he's going to be able to put a music into that device you're holding. And before you know it, iPod actually was created, and musicians started downloading their records and they start putting it on that platform. And as a result of that, it solved a problem for both the user, the musicians, and for everyone to be able to listen to music without going through in the old days where you have to use a DVD or a CD-ROM or a flat screen or a big TV to be able to watch and listen to that music. That is an example of a wealth creation that Steve Jobs actually solved today. And you can actually look at the worth value of Apple as a company today. Now, let's go more further today, because until you see that problem is actually solved, you can never be able to create wealth. If you are on a journey to be able to set a long-term 2.5 year goal or 3 years goal, a mid-term, which is 5 years goal, or a long-term goal, which is a 10-year goal. For example, when you are able to save, let's say you save 500 of your currency equivalents in the country where you belong to. If you save 500 every month, by the end of the year, you find out that you've been able to save 500 times 12, which is 60 or 6,000 equivalents. When you multiply it for about 5 years, you find out that you've been able to save a lot of money, which is equivalent to a lot of money, which is 6,000 times 5, which is a good money. Now, when you now say, you know what, let me now multiply that 6,000 times 10. It means that in 10 years, you've been able to save that 60,000 equivalents of that currency in your local area. Albert Einstein once said that the law of compounding is the wonder of the world. Because when you compound, when you save over the years, you can be able to have a lot of value for that thing you have. If you are on a financial plan of a long-term, short-term, and a mid-term goal, you've got to know what is financial plan. Financial plan is a document that involves an evaluation of a person, currency, monetary value, or situations that your financial future objectives are meant to be. Now, it means that it has a lot of elements. Financial plan can be different types of them. It can be maybe for your retirement. It can be maybe you're planning for a business budget. It might be maybe you want to buy a house, or it might be that you're planning for your company as an entrepreneur or as a business owner. You're planning for about 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, where you want to be and how much you should make and how much expansion is meant to be. That is an example of how you're able to set financial plan. And everybody, every staff member have a target. There is no company that is operating that does not have a target for staff members, for individual, even as a family. Maybe perhaps you're a career person, you actually set a goal for yourself and your family. If you want to go for a life, you've got to set goals. You've got to create values. Now, that is about how you're able to create financial and why. Short-term savings or short-term goal is you paying off. For example, you want to be able to pay off your car, your mortgage, your house loans, or maybe your students loan, or perhaps you want to be able to pay off the debt that your family or your children or your company is actually owing for a particular years. And before you know it, it might be 2 years, it might be 5 years, it might be 3 years. But that is a short-term goal. Or perhaps you are looking at the power of compounding. Now you know if you don't save, you cannot save in the time of hard time. What you save in a winter time can save you in summertime. When you look at what I'm talking about, that is short-term goals. And you maybe perhaps you want to say, as a company, want to be able to reach a particular target, finding a source of funding, want to look for employees. You can set that as a long-term, a short-term goal. Or perhaps you want to look for business partners in that business, or you want to look for more revenue for investors to be able to come into your business. Yes, sure. It is a short-term goal. Perhaps you now need to break them down over the days, over the hours, over the years, and over the month. And that way you can be able to checkmate to see where you are. Now, let's talk about the midterm goal. The midterm goal is the middle planning of your financial planning as an organization or as an individual. And you are transitioning between a short term or maybe a 5-year goal plan, for example. If you, for example, maybe you want to be a student, you want to study, maybe let's say financial analyst, or you want to become a business analyst in that school where you are looking for, and you're planning to go for about 3 to 5 years to be able to finish the degree you want to go on. Now, it doesn't only end there. When you look at that, that's a midterm goal. And at the end of the day, the whole major game is for you to be able to start your business, or you want to be able to create a business, or you want to be able to do something to become more formidable within society and make an impact and solving problems. Now you've got to know how many years. Perhaps maybe you're a career person or an individual or entrepreneur that's saying, you know what, in the next 5 years we want to be able to have our own place of operation for our business. We want to be able to ascertain a certain goal. We want to be able to create a certain number of businesses, X amount, or maybe offices you want to open, or expansion can be a midterm goal. By the time you look at all these things, you've got to put the timeline towards it, because it is. Now, midterm also implies that it is an immediate problem. Like credit card, for example, maybe as an individual, you want to be able to pay off that credit card you don't want to use credit card because there are good debt, there are bad debts. You've got to know what it is. And again, you need to start concentrating on time, on some of objectives and things that you actually do. And this is where you start looking for equity versus liability. Liability, as we always say, in the Zillionaire community, in the wealth creation masterclasses, that liability is anything that takes money off your pocket. Liability is anything that makes you spend from your pocket but that does not bring a return. Now, what is the example of liability? The phone you're owing, that you're holding in your hand, or maybe the TV screen in your house, or maybe your shoe that you're putting on, or your clothes, for example. They're all liability, they're not assets, except if you start a suit hiring company, where that suit is actually being loaned to people for wedding or for occasions. Then it can become an equity or an asset. Or perhaps maybe the car that you have in your garage that is parked outside there, you might, because it's being parked there, it's not bringing in money. It's a liability, but it can become an equity if it's actually being put on Uber, on luxuries, or perhaps in some of the businesses we run in some other part of Africa where you have luxurious cars that goes to pick celebrities, or maybe and so on and so forth, to be able to ease, and we get money on 6 months, 12 months, on 10 months. These are some of the things that we do as part of this Zillionaires community. On this note, equity is that thing that brings money onto you, into your pocket, and that is actually increasing in value as time goes on. And it's also an asset. Maybe the house you're living in, you turn the house to be an Airbnb, it can become an income generation, it will become an equity or an asset instead of becoming a liability. Remember, liability is anything that actually takes money out of your pocket. The question here to you is, when you're setting your long-term, your mid-term, and your short-term goal, have you been able to differentiate as a company, as an individual, about the major difference on this. Now, when we're talking about the long-term goal, which we're going to be concluding with today, is that you've got to know that long-term goal is usually designed for more than 5 years, and they require long financial planning, long financial wisdom, experience, knowledge, so that you can be able to break and hit those goals. And also, long-term is the summary of combination of short-term, mid-term goals. And these are, for example, you want to be able to save over 5 years, over 12 years, over 10 years in that business you're operating, to be able to make sure everybody have their pension, for example, or you're paying a retirement plan, or perhaps you're paying for pension, you're paying for insurance savings for over some years. It can be a long-term goal. And maybe it might be perhaps for your children, you're actually saving for them so that by the time they get to varsity, you're not actually going to be stranded. You keep saving while they are at age 0 until when they are at age 18 or 19 or 16, where then they actually head into varsity. That time, you find out that those money you've been able to save, the bank would have actually increased in value for those things that you've put into that. Or perhaps it might be a business. You might be looking at acquiring more assets, turning it into, or maybe a relocation plan as an individual. Perhaps you want to go into a country, you want to find out. You're not going to become a citizen at an instant. It takes time to be able to. Long-term planning for business, it can be maybe perhaps the way you've been operating your business has always been analog form or a manual form of processes. But you're looking at long-term where you don't need to do anything, but it's only by the push of a button. For example, in one of our business, we used to operate about 13, 14 years ago, where we're operating these businesses as a manual form of operation, where people, families, students usually come to the office to be able to say they want an education for a particular varsity abroad. Then we look at automation. Hence why today I'm going to also refer you, if you're operating a business as part of the zillionaires community, you've got to start thinking about how to turn your business into automations. Maybe having a mobile app, maybe creating a solution that can be affordable. On the last note, friends, zillionaires, entrepreneurs, mentees, wealth creators, have you been able to know that there is difference between a mid-term goal, a long-term goal, and a short-term goal? I hope you've actually been able to learn something today. If you're on a journey of creating wealth, you've got to target something that is meaningful. I'll leave you today to say, do you know what your short-term, your mid-term, and your long-term goal are? And if you don't know, kindly listen to this over and over and take some pen to paper, and before you know it, you'll be able to get something. Once again, I'm your financial wealth creation entrepreneur mindset surgeon. Until I come your way again, my name is Dr. Julius Oluwasegun. I'll see you again. Goodbye for now.